Oh man. All right, should we do this? Let's get it going.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
here we go. All right. Welcome to Inside the 18, live from my bunker in Palm Desert, California. I am Michael Magid. With me is 99 World Cup winner Saskia Weber, Instagram and YouTube and coaching sensation himself, Pro GK Academy's Omar Zini, and joining us for the first time, I'm pretty sure, is IMG. This is definitely going to be edited out. IMG AD of goalkeeping, Matt Brown. What is up, dude?
How are you guys?
You're in the garage again, aren't you, Michael?
I am not in the garage. I'm actually I've been moved. So you remember that little room I was moved into where my dad peered in with the baby?
Yeah.
That's where I am now. So I've taken everything and I've moved it into that little area right now. So that's why you see the banners behind me right here. And it's literally a little area. Like I have a little card table that I'm on right now with the thing. And there's no space for me to put my feet underneath this thing. So I'm doing like the frog sit.
That must be a really low card table.
It's a very low. Oh, that's a short joke right there at my expense. I didn't even see that coming right there. Oh, this is fun.
Sorry, that was too easy.
Well, so here's the thing for anybody out there listening right now, any of the insiders out there listening, you're probably saying like, oh, come on, how can you guys be so disrespectful when you have a guest on like this? But Matt tunes in for this. Matt's actually a fan of the show. That's actually how Matt ended up coming on the show. He reached out and he's like, hey, man, I don't know if I've got something that's interesting for you guys to talk about, but here it is. And I'm like, yeah, everyone's got something interesting to talk about. Yeah, in the goalkeeping community. So,
but it's
absolutely.
IMG. Hello.
Yeah, that's literally. Oh, by the way, the best thing is that when Matt sent his little by the way, guys, speaking of that, here's a total plug for the reviews right here. Matt sent his review with his handle in it. And that's how I was able to communicate with him. And then I found out that he was like the director at IMG. And I'm like, dude, you should have started with that.
Right?
You were like a goalkeeper coach that likes the podcast. I'd be like, yeah, all right, well, that's great.
Hey,
he's like, yeah.
Mike, all we can see is your chin and ups. Do you need a booster seat? What's going on?
Okay. Should I get higher up?
Yeah.
Should I get higher up like this? Is that better?
Good job.
All right. Was I really this far down?
Yeah,
okay.
you were like this.
All right. I was crawling down there. Anyway, guys, if you want to come on the podcast, all you have to do is leave a review. That's all you got to do. Leave a review. We're going to have 17,000 people on the show. No, honestly, guys, leave your social media handle when you're leaving a review. If you've got a great idea for the show, contact at insidethe18media.com. Reach out to us. Over 350 reviews worldwide. Matt Brown is one of them right there. By the way, speaking of that, we got a review from Brazil, guys. How cool is that?
Oh, love it.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I know Pro GK Academy gets reviews from, everywhere in the world every 10 seconds. But for us, this is a big deal. So shout out to Fred Braga. Oh man, my Portuguese is not good. Fred Bragalia. And he goes, great to hear about goalies, methods, and the environment in the U.S. from via Apple Podcasts in Brazil. That's all you got to say. And I want to give a special shout out to Matt W. Wilcox, who left a 7-page review. Yeah, so he's going to come on the show, mainly because he's already told us his entire life story. Actually, honestly, shout out to Matt. He's a really supportive insider. And obviously, man, the fact that through your injury and stuff like that, listening to us idiots, talk about goalkeeping has helped you persevere is really, honestly, I'm honored like that because that's why we do this. We do this so that people can benefit from the content and be a little silly at the same time. So shout out to you, Matt. Yeah. Everyone's like, all right, where we're going from there. All right, guys, why don't we just get into today's topic because we've basically been adolescents through this entire beginning of the show. So let's just get into it. Today's topic is developing the adolescent goalkeeper. Honestly, most people are terrified of working with this age group. And Matt's like, oh, yeah, that's what I do for a living. So that's why we wanted to have Matt on to talk about it. So let's start with Matt first off. What kind of is the range of adolescence from a goalkeeping standpoint? And is that kind of the same as the overall adolescence of a regular human being?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty similar. But, I consider when it comes to goalkeepers, male and female, it's like that 14 to 17-year-old time frame. That's the one we really focus on, especially not just in youth soccer, but at our residency program here at IMG. So they're similar, but there's obviously a couple differences here and there based on, maturity, social surroundings, things like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking maturity is kind of is one of the number one issues, is because everyone's maturity is at different level. My maturity at 13 is very close to what it is now. Other people have grown up since then. Omar, you get a lot of messages from a lot of people around the world who are in this age bracket, and sometimes do you find it difficult communicating with them because everyone's kind of in a different emotional path?
Yeah, I think I've started to take that a little bit more into account, where different people ask different questions based on their physical attributes, based on their social situations, based on their own personality. So I've definitely taken that all into account now when I train my goalkeepers. And I think the biggest question I always get is, how can I make it professionally from this age, or how can I get it to a Division I college? And I feel like a lot of young kids are always looking for that like specific answer that's going to get them to, okay, I take that answer, I'm going to run with it, I'm going to become, Division I athlete, when really a lot of them don't reflect enough, I don't think, on their own attributes and what they bring to the game, and kind of how they can collaborate with their goalkeeper coaches to bring the best out of them. So that's kind of the things that I think about when I get those questions.
Yeah. Saskia, I want to ask you, because you work with both college and, adolescent keepers in regards to youth keepers in that age group. What is kind of like the distinct difference between kind of like those early teens to mid-teens to finally those late teens when you're getting the college players?
Well, I think the early teens, even the younger, like they're just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and for a lack of better description, more like open to coaching and criticism. And I think when you hit that high school age, there's so many other things going on in that player's life that things change, and you have to be cognizant of that and understand that, some of the kids that you thought were going to develop into a goalkeeper and go on, they might not. And interests change, and their dynamics of their friendships change, and everything. And then once you get the keepers that get past that and get into college, again, you find those keepers that are invested and that are like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed again. So I think that there's like an ebb and flow in that from the younger, middle, and then older again. And it's a hard thing to navigate, to be honest. Like I said, you have players that you thought were going to be all in and were just amazing, and they'll drop off. They will. Whether it's because they found new interests, now they want to, follow a different sport, or they're an artist, or they're like more into, drama or something like that. It just changes. So you have to be ready to kind of adapt to every single keeper individually.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was in adolescence, I thought I was going to play in the NBA. Like, I mean, I'm not joking. Like, I literally thought I was going to play.
You talk about it often.
Yeah. So like, so not only do interests change, but delusions change too. They go from the delusion of playing in the NBA to playing for Real Madrid.
Reality.
That's right.
But Matt, you're obviously you're in a residency program, which is a little bit different than a lot of us here who are coaching, where we get to go home and the kids aren't next door to us. So, I mean, my gosh, that should be, it's got to be a sitcom, dude. Like, come on, like the adolescent goalkeeper and like the goalkeeper coach, and like they're, eating breakfast together. I mean,
well, one of the good things about it is we do have like, dorm parents and and RAs and stuff that are on campus. So we full-time staff, we get to get off campus, at night and go home to our families. But you're right. The dynamic, we get to see everything, right? Unlike a youth club where you're with them for a couple hours a night and then they go home to mom and dad, we are mom and dad, right? We're the shoulder to cry on. We're that for every goalkeeper and every player at the academy. So we take that to heart. And it's something, that I really enjoyed here. I'm a family guy. So I enjoy it with my players as well, as to just be there for them whenever they need me. If it's the weekend, they haven't seen mom and dad, they want to do this, they want to do that. Yeah. We try to facilitate whatever we can for them.
Yeah. I mean, that's, it's a boarding school.
Yeah.
So that's a monumental undertaking.
Matt, is that sorry, Mike, is that
no, go ahead.
Is that difficult for you though? Sometimes when you kind of have those relationships with those players that goes pretty deep, and you have them in the ins and outs, and sometimes you're gonna have to have those difficult conversations with them. Do you feel like that helps being with them all the time, or do you feel like that also can hinder you from maybe speaking your mind as a coach because you're so close to them as like a parent figure?
No, I think honestly it helps because they trust you. So you get that type of relationship with them where you're just not coming in and you're just the guy they see every once in a while. Like, they really trust your input. Now you're going to have a small percentage that come through the academy that won't trust you, but that's very minimal. But I find it a little bit easier because they trust the process of what we're putting them through and the whole holistic approach that we're putting on the plate for them.
Yeah. I want to talk about that in regards to the trust issue, because there's going to be a lot of outside influences, obviously, for an adolescent, and whether that they're positive and negative. Like, for instance, Matt, one of the most difficult things for you must have to be is that, they're watching Omar's Pro GK Instagram channel. And then, then they're looking at you and they're going like, did you see that session? Because that's the session I want to do right now. So it's got to be very difficult for you to emulate, the greatness of Omar. No, I'm actually joking it, because of the fact is that like Omar really prides himself in regards to the fact that like he tries to learn from other goalkeeper coaches, and he tries to develop sessions that are going to be beneficial to the goalkeeping community, as opposed to a lot of content that's out there that, let's just say, it's not for the benefit of the goalkeeper. And yet, they see it and then they're like, why are you not doing this? And so how do you build that trust with the goalkeeper to understand what's really important? Because honestly, at 13, I thought top hand saves was the most important thing in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
It's, so, we have all of our players set up on IDPs. We have individual development plans for all our players. And we deal with kids from all over the world, right? We got Germany, Mexico, Brazil, you name it. All right. So we're dealing with different types of goalkeepers, right? Different types of environments they came from. But, what we put in place is we built a performance plan with our goalkeepers, and they trust us. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but they do. Luckily, I have the pleasure to work with Peter Meller, too, who obviously is a goalkeeping icon in the U.S. and in England. And he's been trusted for years with developing some very high-name goalkeepers and big-time goalkeepers in the U.S. So, the biggest thing for us is that we talk about the trust. They've seen the product. There's a reason why they've chosen IMG. Maybe from our goalkeepers in the past, they've seen how they've produced on the field, whether it's for a national team or for their collegiate experience. And they trust what we do. And it is tough. Like, you'll go away, you'll see a kid, hey, coach, I did see this on Instagram. Can we do that? But then you got to break it down, why it's important, why it's not important. And 99% of the time, when you break it down for the kids, they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make sense. That's not going to help in the kid's development. So as long as you have, you give them an idea why something won't work, they'll buy into it.
Wait, Matt, sorry, Mike. Matt, one thing you just mentioned, though, that I started talking to a coach recently about it, is that when we watch the England sessions on YouTube, when you watch those goalkeepers when they go, you notice that a lot of them are very stiff. Like they're very not one dimensional, but their hand shape is in one specific place. They don't really I don't know. In my opinion, they don't have that flair that I feel like you're saying. You have Brazilian goalkeepers, you have goalkeepers from all these different nationalities that are coming in, and especially here in California, we have the big Latino American kind of influence. So for me, sometimes I notice that and I go, are we kind of at an advantage here in the States where we have all these kids who are, groomed in different types of environments, from the way their goalkeeper coaches were raised in the Hispanic backgrounds, English backgrounds, all that stuff, but it's like a melting pot. Everything is coming together, and you're kind of having these goalkeepers being produced at a different level. I don't feel as stiff, but do you feel like at IMG you have those goalkeepers that are coming in, they're learning off one another, and you're kind of like, do you enjoy seeing them take a little bit of the Brazilian style, take a little bit of the European style? Yeah,
absolutely. One of the things, we'll build a certain technical foundation we want to see our keepers have, but we won't hold them to, you got to stand exactly like this. Your hand shape's got to be perfect. They're individuals. They have their own pluses. They have their own negatives. We got to make what works for them, right? We got to help them. So, I'll deal with a German goalkeeper that likes to set their hands in front, but then they swing back, right? And they want, but it works for them, right? But then when you make them, if they make a mistake and it's the same thing, we'll say, well, now we break it down why it might be different if we do it this way. Brazilian goalkeepers love to use their feet. Guess what? They're big time. And one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now is Brazilian, and he uses his feet all the time. So it's just, you have to be open. I think that's one thing our kids really like, is we're open to everything with them about, hey, I'm not going to tell you exactly, you need to do it exactly this way, but let's fix it a little bit towards this direction. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, we'll fix it again.
I think that's something we've talked about a lot here, Mike, is that it is like integrating that melting pot. And we do have that ability here in the United States to take a little bit from everywhere. And there is no one way is the highway. Like, that's not it. You know, if you know, you are emulating a Brazilian goalkeeper and you're really good using your feet, but, you know, other things aren't working, you know, we're going to have you try something else, and we're going to find a middle road to that, so that you kind of can perfect everything. And I think what we've talked about is, like, you know, if you're going to do something, do it the best you can. And we'll add things to that repertoire from there. And that, I think that is an advantage we have here in the US, where we're not just stuck to a German way, a Brazilian way, an English way. We have all of that coming together.
I've tried to do the German arm swing, and it is not a good idea for me. It is.
Right?
It is a terrible idea, because it looks like I'm intentionally trying to not get the ball. Like, they're like, "Are you playing dodgeball, dude? Like, what is going on there?"
Is that the overhand? No, sorry.
No, that's the one. Oh, dude, Maddie, I don't know if you saw that with Conway when we were talking about the overhead throw, and we're like, "How often do you use
He's
it?"
like, "Have you guys used the overhead throw?" And Conway and I were just like, "What are you talking about?"
Can you show us that?
You mean a throw-in?
Yeah, exactly.
Saskia, I want to ask you this question, and this, you know, obviously this goes to everybody here, but is there a difference in regards to the male and the female during this stage of development? Because I've noticed a difference in regards to how you have to approach the players, and I'm being a little bit general here, and that's why I'm asking Saskia, because so I don't seem as completely on PC as what I've just walked into.
I think in the middle adolescence, like you're talking like freshman high school, and
yeah,
just
exactly.
coming into that and everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, you find that the girls have grown faster than the boys have. However, with that comes awkwardness. And you find that although, you know, one of my players, Jaya, who's as tall as I am, is still growing into her physique, and still like growing into that like awkward, like all of a sudden she shot up 6 inches. And I think that there's a difference I find in the guys across the board will be a little bit shorter, but more in control of their body and athleticism, where the girls have gotten a bit taller and a bit awkward. And it's kind of readjusting that and helping them train into that awkward height and size. And there's a mentality aspect to it as well, you know, to be dead honest. You know, these girls have hit freshman year in high school, the boys have as well. It's dealing with that side of things, the intensity, bringing out that aggression in them, as far as like, you know, and look, anybody can yell at me and do whatever you want, but they're becoming women, and there's a pressure of, you know, kind of being that girl and being this and that and the other, as opposed to leaving behind your like intensity and hardcore and everything like that. It's being able to balance that, where I don't find that as much with the boys. The boys hit that age and they're still like, you know, I almost said something else. They're all like head in and hardcore and stuff. So it's kind of managing that. It's a dual thing. And I think that body issue it's a legitimate dynamic that you have to figure out how to balance.
I want to talk about that because, I mean, look, and this is not a disrespectful thing towards Omar in any way whatsoever, but he was a little bit awkward because he grew really quickly. No, you don't, dude, you did. You grew really quickly.
Don't worry, Michael, you'll still hit your growth spurt.
There's hope.
I'm still waiting. I still see all those those ads on the internet, you know, for pituitary gland enhancements and all that.
Always crosses your mind, huh?
Oh, I love you, Michael. You can take a joke.
But you know, the funniest thing is, like, I used to be so insecure about my height. And then as I got older, I almost took it as kind of like a sign of pride. The fact that, like, I could still play at a pretty good level being a smaller keeper. I mean,
absolutely.
you know, because I was very insecure about it. And then I started realizing that, like, if my play, and this goes to any younger keepers out there who might be on the smaller side, it's like, if your play, you know, matches your ability out there, regardless of what your height is or whatever, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's not so much for me. It's not so much there. It's that quick growth spurt, and it's like a physical awkwardness. It's legit. It is what it is. And I've seen it in multiple female goalkeepers when they hit that growth spurt, and all of a sudden, you know, they're taller than any of my guy goalkeepers, but they're still growing into their muscle memory and their understanding of their body, and now how to get down from 6 feet tall or from 5'9" to the ground, where like a year ago they were like 5'5". And so it's understanding your body and stuff. And that it's something you have to think about and train and work on with it at that age.
And I think, there's, I was talking to Tim Dittmer, who's the head of FA, like 3 weeks ago, and he brought up.
I'm sorry, can you drop that name again, Omar?
I'm trying to give it context, but he said that they had Peter Schmeichel come through to one of their like coaching seminars, or there's something with coaches. And he said that his mentality on technique and all that stuff is don't hammer it in until after the goalkeeper has grown.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if Matt, for you, is that something that like has kind of crossed your guys' mind?
Yeah, I think you know, Sasha, she hit all of it on the head. I mean, you got to be careful what you deal with the goalkeeper, because they're gonna shoot up, they're gonna stay the same, you know, physique. Some are, so you have to be careful how you go about it. The one thing I would add, because she was spot on with everything, is I find the females a little more accepting in that age range. When you're coaching them, you can be a little bit harder on. They'll accept every word you say. The boys still have a little bit of an arrogance to them, like, hey, you know.
Absolutely.
They already know, they know everything. So you gotta balance it. So, but I noticed with my female goalkeepers that they're accepting all, whether it's criticism, whether it's positive output, whatever it is, they accept it because they want to be better. They want to go to the next step. But yeah, that awkwardness, man, it's something you got to battle with each keeper, especially on the female side when they hit it. Because then you got to talk about injuries, right? If your session's not designed right for someone who's awkward and growing, you don't want to hammer them with some kind of injury that's going to hurt them for, 6 to 9 months.
No, absolutely.
I want to talk about that because Omar, you put up a really good social media post yesterday based on a piece that we did with Ian Abrahams in regards to, not always the technical, breakdown and the technical coaching is always the best, is always the kind of the best method, because sometimes there might be something mentally. Adolescence, there's a lot going on in the head. There's so much going on in the head. There's the hormones are raging and all that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of times, I was saying earlier in a comment yesterday, is that we always look for the technical fix. Well, in adolescence, like Matt was just talking about in regards to the awkwardness, and Saskia with the awkwardness, the technical fix might not happen. Their body may just physically not be able to do that. And there's the frustration that a year ago when I was 12, I could do that, and now I can't. And what is going on? Am I bad now at soccer? Because honestly, that happened to a lot of goalkeepers. They go, I'm not good anymore. So how do we help that goalkeeper understand that it's perfectly natural and they're going to get back there?
I mean, I've always been honest and open. Like I have a goalkeeper who had been 5'1" forever. She had a size 11 foot. I mean, I'm 5'10" and I have a size 9. So, I mean, and she's falling behind on runs and this and that, and the other. I'm like, dude, you're running around and got clown feet. But I know she's going to grow into it. It's each individual. You have to talk to them. You have to make them understand. And as well as the field coaches. I have field coaches that are pissed off because she's not keeping up on a 2-mile run. I'm like, have you ever tried to run in your dad's shoes? I'm like, you got to look at the physique of these kids. You got to look at their awkwardness, and it's not cut and dry. They're not done growing. And so it's not apples for apples with every kid. And you have to have those conversations. And I've told my kids, my Ryans, my Orens and stuff that are getting beat up high, and these guys are going to grow. And I'm just like, you know what I mean? I'm sorry you're playing in a full-size goal and you're 5 feet tall. I'm like, I can only position you so much, and your positioning was right, but it is what it is. You know, you kind of have to have those conversations so they don't get down on themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing is we talk about with goalkeepers communication. Reality, I mean, that's reality, right? If you're a smaller goalkeeper and you haven't grown yet, you have to do what you can do at that moment. Where's your position, and what's your footwork like to get a ball maybe that's over. So they have to believe. Like I bring up the word a lot, trust. Like your players have to trust you, and if they trust you, they'll listen to you. They'll understand the process. They'll understand what the end product could be, right? Instead of getting frustrated. But there's going to be frustration, and you got to let them deal with frustration on their own. But you also got to comfort them and let them know why it might be occurring and how long, or you know what the situation actually is.
Yeah.
Omar, you get a lot of DMs. I was just going to say, you get a lot of DMs from that age group. What advice do you give them specifically so they understand that they're going to be okay?
Normally what I try to say is like, just one is being proactive. Like, okay, yes, you may not be able to get the balls that go over your head, but what are some technical skills or tactical skills that you can implement now, good habits that you can implement now before you hit your growth spurt, that once you hit your growth spurt, you realize, oh, wow, okay, I started cheating a little bit more off my line because I was, slower, a little bit slower, not as athletic, but I was able to cheat off my line so I could become more, I guess, tactically aware. My positional sense was a little bit better, so that once that size did come in, it wasn't like they were wasting time on attributes and things that weren't going to help them. But now they start aligning all the tools that they realized at that young of an age. And then once they hit their full athleticism, their full height, their full speed, everything comes to the forefront and everything kind of is aligned and in symmetry. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would tell coaches too, is making sure you have that social aspect, like Matt and Saskia were saying, is have those honest conversations, even with goalkeepers that aren't going to be that tall. It's like, look, I've seen from your parents and a lot of Hispanic kids that I know, her mom and dad are 5'6", 5'8". You're not going to be probably 6 foot. So look, when you're a little bit shorter, you might have to be a line goalkeeper like Hugo Lloris, stay a little bit deeper and, focus on your reactions a little more. So, okay, now that we know that, and again, I'm being brutally honest and kind of like giving them the truth serum here.
This is a Scared Straight program by Omar Zini.
But you're telling them the truth.
True.
Yeah. So there's no more wasted time. It's like, okay, now we get to understanding of what your limitations are, what you're going to be good at. Okay. How can I as a goalkeeper coach, now that we've, detailed those little factors, how can you and I sit down? And again, I'm going to give them the platform to think on their own and be social and understand the cognitive side of the goalkeeping position. They tell me what they want and then what they think. And then I couple it with, okay, let me fine tune what you meant. And let's put it together to like IDP, like you said, Matt, figure out specifically what each goalkeeper can do to maximize their potential if they do not grow at the rate that we want them to.
Speaking of that, go ahead.
There's nothing better than when that moment hits and then, they've been beaten in certain respects and all of a sudden they're going back to the bar, they use opposite hand, they tip it over the bar, when that was never happening a year before. And because you've given them the tools, even though a year before they were getting beat on that, but they know the proper positioning, they know the proper technique and everything. And now as they hit that growth spurt, or as they understand everything better, now it's working. And Absolutely. They understand why they went through the pain of everything, but now it's working. And that's an awesome, awesome moment, in my opinion.
It is, yeah.
I have a question for Maddie here. Obviously, you've got a residency program, so these kids are with each other 24/7, as opposed to if you're at a traditional youth environment. Let's say you're in a different stage of development than another kid, physically or mentally or emotionally or whatever. You go home, you go with your friends over there, and then you come back to goalkeeper training in a couple days or whatever. They're around each other 24/7. So is that more difficult? How do you handle that? Because one kid you might have had in 6th grade, and then next year in 7th grade, all of a sudden you're like, man, they're just not at the same level as these other guys, and they live with each other. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough part. I think a good dynamic we have here is, a lot of goalkeepers see that here. They understand where they're at. We have our top tier of goalkeepers, we have our middle tier, and then we have the guys and girls who might not be at the top in those groups. But, they see it, which is good. They'll be in the same training environment. The training environments will be detailed to the top goalkeeper. And then those other goalkeepers will find ways throughout their day or throughout the week to get extra sessions, whether it's with myself or Peter, or even in their team dynamic or in a functional group outside of school. But we it is tough, you know, because, you know, in a youth dynamic, they're all training at the same time, those third tier goalkeepers, right? So they're working with each other rather than the top. So it's something that's tough to handle, but it's also, we go back to trust in the process of what we do here. And we have those difficult conversations with those players. This is where you're at. This is where we see you at the moment. And a lot of times they buy in, you know, there's a reason they come to IMG. They feel they're not getting what they need at another club and youth environment, might be getting left behind because they aren't that level. So we have to facilitate a little bit more for them.
Do you guys have a sports psychologist?
Yeah, we have, you know,
Excellent.
The whole holistic approach, you know, the kids get mental nutrition, they get physical development with the strength and conditioning coaches. They get the mental side, they get vision.
Excellent.
And it's throughout the week. So they have a pretty rigorous schedule with all that. You know, the mental coaches come out to keeper training once a week, and we break down the sessions based on a mentality aspect of the game. What might be going on in this situation? How can the mental coach help? Same thing with the strength and conditioning department. They have goalkeeper specific weight room sessions, you know, where they're isolated doing what we would do as goalkeepers. So they get all those extra pieces.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Like I would love to see some sort of a mental aspect with 99.9% of the clubs in the United States, the big clubs and stuff like that, that there's an outlet or at least a resource that these kids, because like we're talking, when they hit adolescence, I mean, you know, a lot of the conversations I have with parents, yes, it has to do about goalkeeping, but it has to do about a lot of other things.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It'd be wonderful if like even my club had that, hey, here's so-and-so, you know, sports psychologist, like, let's go sit down and talk with him and stuff like that, figure out what's going on with you in school and, you know, dynamics at home or whatever it is. Because it's, you know, you can't just put kids on a field, train them, and just expect them to show up every day when they're dealing with so many other outside influences and then be pissed when something's wrong. Oh, yeah. Like it's, you know, they're not adults. They're not professionals. They're not like, you know, you shut everything out when you get on the field and that's the end of it. These are kids.
Yeah. And I think Mike, that's one thing that I've been again, getting from these interviews with coaches is that I think the next layer of goalkeeper coaching, it's going to come into like, we're almost becoming sports psychologists. And I think we can all attest to that. We are sports psychologists at times where, you know, these goalkeepers see us as kind of parent figures for 2-3 hours a week that we see them. And sometimes we're the only outlet that they have in terms of kind of conversation and letting us know what's going on at school. And I think I had it one time where a kid was feeling down and moody and didn't really have a good session. And 20 minutes in, I said, hey, what's going on? And the kid broke down and didn't cry, but it was like, look, I had a rough day at school. Kids were picking on me. And so, you know, just having those conversations that, like Mike, we talked about earlier about Dan Abrahams, is that I think in that session, had I not asked that question and say, hey, what's going on? I probably would have been saying, okay, that technique was awful. Why are you doing that? Right. And now instead of it working in stride with them, in unison with them, now they're overthinking and now I'm adding more to their plate. So I think my biggest thing for myself, I'm going to say myself, and I think all of the coaches, is continuously do more and more reading about the mind and studying the mind. Absolutely. Because there's, like you said, Saskia, it'd be nice to have sports psychologists for every team and every school, but that's just not the reality, because as we've seen, like 11 programs just got cut now from D1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So there's not really much information going out there for those kids. They're kind of out there on their own. So for us as goalkeeper coaches, it's accountability for us to step out there and do more reading. And if anything, if at the worst you don't have time to read, just ask the goalkeepers how they're doing.
Yeah, Omar, I 100% agree with you. I've had multiple times one kid, and it was a field player, wasn't even a goalkeeper. I realized she was just off. And I walked up to her on the side, just, you know, and I'm just like, what's going on? Is everything okay? Find out she's getting bullied in school. She hates school, doesn't want to go back to school, like borderline, like not a good situation, you know, and set up a meeting with her parents and had a conversation. But these are things she hadn't said to her parents, hadn't said out loud. She was embarrassed of. And same with a bunch of guys, players that I've had and everything. Like, you have to, you can't just put your head down and not understand why a kid isn't performing that day. And sometimes there's a world out there, and we have to ask those questions, because, you know, we can't just hammer them. Hey, why aren't you making these saves? Hey, what's wrong with you? You're tired. Like, you don't know what's going on. You have to ask, and you have to be cognizant of that.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career in regards to when I was a younger goalkeeper coach, is that look, the problem with adolescents for me is that sometimes you'll get the 16-year-old and they look like they're 27. And so I started talking to them like they're 27, because they look like a man or they look like a woman and they carry themselves like a man or a woman. And then, you'll say something. And I think and I want to talk about what mistakes that a lot of younger goalkeeper coaches make with this group. But I think one of the mistakes that I made is that I didn't edit myself before I made a comment, recognizing the kind of damage I could make based on what I just said right there without all the facts. Because again, I'm only there at the session. I wasn't there at school. And I remember a moment where I literally shattered one kid, and I didn't mean to, based on my frustration and based on my lack of knowledge of what was going on in their life. And that's when I recognized, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn still of being not just a teacher on the field, but also a teacher off the field too.
I've actually pulled a kid from practice because I realized that they're just not on point, but I realized it was something else going on, and just said, hey, why don't you step out? Why don't you help me? Why don't you be my assistant today? You know what I mean? Just like take your gloves off, help me like serve some balls and stuff like that. Take a pause, because I'm not going to sit there and hammer them because they're, their mind's somewhere else and they're making a save. There was something bigger going on, and it doesn't happen across the board. It's not every single kid that's having a bad day of practice. Sometimes they're having a bad day of practice and they're not focused. But we have to, as coaches, understand that that's such a important part of development at that age, that it's not cut and dry. It's not just about soccer.
Yeah. Matt, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen
that coaches make?
Yeah.
Especially at that age, I think the expectations are too high. I think based on what the keeper's actual ability is, I think they put them in situations where they might have never seen that situation before, and they're uncomfortable and they're making mistakes, but the expectation from the coach is continuing to drill the kid, but they haven't really painted the picture for him. So I see that a lot. I think a lot of negative feedback. I think the big, and I might even go out of the picture from goalkeeper coach to like field player coaches, because we're all in a dynamic where we probably our kids probably leave our sessions, and they do at IMG as well. They'll leave our training session. They'll move over to their team session, where if they're not living up to what that coach needs at that moment, they're the downfall of the team, right? And whether it's some kind of tactical session, or maybe it's finishing or crossing or something, and they're just having a bad day like we talked about, and they're just getting hammered, and the coach is just, I think, just too much negative input, rather, especially at that age, at this age we're talking about. They need more positive, right? They need more positive. They need to not be broken down as much. But if you do break them down, it's off to the side. It's not in front of their peers.
Yeah.
Because the peers see it, but at that age, the players want to be accepted. If they're just continuously getting hammered in front of their peers, they're just, they're going to continue to go spiral down. So you want to make sure you're balancing it out. And if you are going to negatively criticize the player, it's off to the side, out of range, out of sight of other players.
Yeah, but it's got to be constructive criticism at
Correct.
that age, period.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and it's got to be explained. Mm-hmm. If you're a goalkeeper coach that's just yelling at them because they're not doing the drill right, then you're not doing your coaching right. Like, why aren't they doing right? Are you breaking down their footwork? Are you breaking down their positioning? Can you pull them aside and say, the reason this keeps happening, the reason you're not making the save is because of this and because of that, and tactically and technically break it down. Yelling at a kid and telling them they should be making a save isn't coaching. Period, especially at this age.
Totally agree. Too many times we see it where, the coaches, they have no substance, right, to what they're saying, right? And then if you ask them and they can't break it down, then it is their fault. So there has to be constructive, have a purpose for your criticism towards the goalkeeper, right? There has to have some backing.
Dude, I mean, like, you don't think a goalkeeper knows they let in a goal?
Yeah, right.
Like, you don't think they're picking the ball out of the net and they already feel bad about it?
I mean,
Matt, quick question for you.
Yep.
So what age groups train together?
So, our dynamics, so we have the boys train in the morning, go to school in the afternoon. The girls are opposite. So we have our 16 to 19 boys train in the morning together. And that's about, about 16 goalkeepers that work in 4 different groups.
Wow. Right?
Yeah. So, but it's all scheduled out. And then the girls, there's 10, so they work in 2 different groups in the afternoon. So yeah, you have that range. And really anybody knows once those after a couple weeks or a couple days of seeing the level of the keepers, you know how to pair them off. We might have to put a 16-year-old with a 19-year-old based on ability, right? Just to push them. But yeah, so that's our age range. Then in the evening, we also have some U14 and U15 goalkeepers. So we run 3 sessions a day at the academy based on scheduling.
Hey, Matt, they're integrated with all of the sports.
Yeah, so, so we have, football, basketball, you name it, at IMG as well. But they go to school with them.
That's
they,
great,
they do everything with them. So, so they get to see it all. And, one thing I'm really impressed with, something we started this year throughout the academy, is our middle school kids actually, I think it's once a month, have to go play a different sport.
That's what I was about to ask you. Yeah. I was about to ask you, do they get to do other sports, even if it's just to connect with those teams or have some fun? And
the coaching staff actually takes the session on and takes the kids under their wing. So it's had some really positive feedback. And it's, we know, especially goalkeepers, they need to do something different.
Well, right? Also because being in school with a bunch of other.
Yeah.
I think she froze.
I think she froze for a second.
She froze?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Well,
did Sas come back?
Yeah.
You there? Hello? All right. Well, we'll move on for a second. We'll move on for. Yeah. Go ahead, Omar.
Matt, I have another question for you on that.
You did that.
Oh, geez.
Am I back?
You're back.
You're back.
This is why there's the magic of editing.
I think the other good thing about that is that the other athlete.
This is a sketch.
I was in this case one of those sketches.
This is one of those sketches, dude. I love this.
I don't know if she can hear us. But Matt, Okay, I'm gonna go with. Oh.
Hi.
You're back.
She's back.
Never mind.
Sorry, Omar.
I was still talking to myself.
Take the fort, Omar.
Matt, so again, building off of that point, when I was kind of curious about, you said sometimes you have the 16s who have maybe incredible ability or better ability or need to be pushed a little bit more. They go with the 19s. Do you guys factor in when you guys draw up your curriculum and stuff, like maybe on certain days, maybe an older goalkeeper, you want to work on their social leadership and presence within a group, and you say, okay, a 16-year-old needs to learn and take the reins and understand how to be I guess get to that next level. And do you on some days tell a goalkeeper who's 19, we're going to work on something, but I want you to take this goalkeeper under your wing and kind of, if they make any mistakes today, I want you to I want you to try and analyze what they may be doing wrong and how you can help them. Like do you work
mentors?
On the social? Yeah, mentors. Yeah. But I think that's, within a group. I mean, I was at the Galaxy Academy when I was younger, and there was a guy who was 6'6", 6'7" guy who just was a massive presence, but he was only a year and a half older than me. And I know for a fact the goalkeeper coach used to tell him, when Omar makes a mistake, when anything happens, I'm not going to say anything on certain days. I need you to speak up. And I don't know, now that I'm kind of reverse engineering myself as a coach and understanding what my coaches did for me when I was younger, I just feel like that's such a smart way of going about, one, developing a goalkeeper's social ability and presence, but also younger goalkeepers' ability to hear a different voice, not just the coaches.
Well, yeah. So sometimes when we break off and we'll do on specific days with different groups, we'll have one of those top goalkeepers join in, maybe I wouldn't say a lesser group, but a younger group, and kind of, we would tell them, hey, you're in charge of this. This is why you're in this group today. Can you help out here? Or a lot of the kids will have study hall, and they'll actually come out to the younger training sessions in the evening and do all the demos, and they'll coach the younger kids. So we try to do it as much as we can. Should we probably do it more? Probably, but we also have alumni that come back that train in the sessions, that talk about the program. They'll be the eyes and the ears that day. So we have a pretty good relationship that way as well.
We do that with our club. Actually, we try to every once in a while, have, even on my Zoom chats right now, I make sure my older female keepers are on and my older male keepers are on, so that the younger kids have those older kids to look up to. And it goes as far as they come to their games. So on the weekends with club, you'll have our younger team showing up to our older team's games, because we've integrated them on field and in goal. So now they're looking up to these guys, and they have a sense of mentorship, and they have a sense of responsibility to teach these younger kids, and a legacy in a sense.
I absolutely love that, Saskia, because that's something that I think is missing in youth soccer in the United States in regards to the club environment. Is it's very insular, in which case everyone's kind of on their own island, and it's like, okay, you play for the 07s, I play for the 05s. I never really connect with you unless maybe I see you at goalkeeper training once in a while. You know, the fact that you're building that type of community, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah,
that reminds me more of college or high school, which again, we had the discussion last week, you know, with Casey Murphy in regards, and before with Mulqueen and Blodgett about the fact that now high school is going to be a thing again, since the DA folding is going to allow kids to play high school again. Matt, I want to ask you that question, because is that missing in this environment in the United States, where there's that competitive nature to play in front of peers and pressure of something? And how do you guys replicate something like that at an IMG? Is it because all the kids go to school together? Is it much more of a community setting there than like at your traditional youth club?
Yeah, it is. But I want to go back just real quick. One thing we do at IMG, and we're lucky to have the ability, is we have our older goalkeepers warm up our other goalkeepers on the weekend when they have matches, right?
Love that.
And it builds that camaraderie, and, you know, and it gets to the point where kids they'll text me like, Coach, I know you got to watch these 2 games. You want me to go warm up such and such?
I love it.
It's awesome. Brilliant, right? And we have a lot of that. So now to your other question with the competitiveness with the high school and the peers, and is that what you're going with?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because we have a different dynamic where we are a residency program, but we're not a high school soccer program, because we play MPL. We play DA, you know, everything is by birth here with us. So we do have that environment, say on the weekends, where the kids are coming out and watching each other. You know, the basketball players and football players are coming out, and they're doing vice versa on the weekend. So I think
awesome.
That's already built. It's built in, right? So it's built in because we're in our own confined little area. So, you know, we have such a big international base, like when goals are scored and there's an atmosphere and it's just the students, it's awesome, right?
It's awesome.
The kids love each other. They come out, they support each other. You know, the dining hall, they're talking about it. It's just it's a really cool dynamic.
I said this, I think we've talked about it, Mike, is when I was coaching Archer Academy here in Brentwood and stuff. And a bunch of the girls were also on my club. The different dynamic to watch those girls play for Archer and play on the field, and have all the girls come out from the different sports and line the fields and cheer their team on. And then they have the responsibility, if they win, walking through the dining hall the next day, talking about it, and pep rallies and this and that and the other. It's something that all athletes, I truly believe, should experience, as opposed to a bunch of parents in folding chairs on a sideline on a weekend watching your club game. There is just something epic about it. There's something that ingrains pride in you, even if you lose. And I think it's imperative, even if the level isn't the level of your club or DA or IMG Academy. It's something that I loved when I was in high school. It's the same as going to your Friday night football game. And it's something that lives in you forever and you'll never forget. And it sets you up for walking to the UCLA stadium in a sold out stadium when you graduate and you go to play. You know, you're graduating from a club team where your parents are in folding chairs to standing in a stadium with 7,000 people. You know, are you used to that pressure? Were you in a high school where there are 2,000 people in your high school? Mine had 500, like 800, but and are you used to all those kids lining the fields and cheering for you and seeing them on campus that next day and everything like that? That is something that I think is imperative, and I think all of our kids need to grow up with, period. Period.
That's such a good point. I think that's honestly, the more conversations you have, the more layers I start to uncover. And I think that is such a, Saskia, that's honestly, actually, I'm going to post that, because I think it's just so, no, I'm serious. I think it's so important for kids to be able to, you know, there's so many pressures when you have your girlfriend or boyfriend come watch you play. You know, there's like so many pressures when you have like the popular kids in school and you invite them to come watch you play. Like it's all about the psychological side. So like you said, when you do that in high school and then you go to college, and it's not just, okay, your friends, now it's college coaches or like national team scouts that are coming to watch you. You're just consistently like reprogramming what your mind, in terms of like how you approach every game and like the psychology that you go through in terms of like the stomach, the butterflies. And once you get, you know what I'm saying? It's progressive. Then you get to the professional environment and you go, okay, yeah, now it's just the next progression in the step. Exactly. That's a really good point. I like
yeah,
that.
you know, we can't emulate it here in the sense like our kids don't grow up in like the Manchester United Academy and like stuff like that. They don't grow up like just becoming like, you know, yes, IMG and stuff, but they don't grow up with that. That is the closest thing we have to that pressure. I mean, getting your lockers decorated, you know, the whole 9 yards, walking around the whole day that in your uniform. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but that's what I did in high school as a soccer and a lacrosse player. And it meant everything to me, and I'll never forget it. And club never emulated that for me. Never. It was like, I love my parents, hi mom and dad, but that's who was on the sideline. You know, they're not allowed to talk. They have to stay a certain distance away, and you know, there are no cheerleaders, and there was no bonfire the night before.
Yeah, but I think a lot of Saskia, I think a lot of that comes with what comes with like pressure, social pressure, is very self-induced, and I think it's important to get to know yourself on a personal level. I think with all the noise and all of like the information out there, it's good, but how that resonates with you is even more important, and how you you know, walk around with your jersey being the center of attention. How do you handle that?
Absolutely.
The only way you handle that, as Mike always says, is with those reps. And when you get more and more reps, you have the trial and error of how you react and how you kind of adjust and adapt to those new environments. And then professionally, when, you know, somebody writes something negatively about you in the newspaper, now you know, yeah, exactly. Now you know, like, okay, someone's already said something negative to me on campus, or didn't like the way I played, or you was questioning why I did certain things. And I kind of have that kind of mental recall and experience versus just hearing parents on the sideline coming in and saying, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's really interesting what you're just saying, because I'm reflecting back kind of to my own career. And Matt, I don't know how you feel about this too, but like personally, I think I remember more saves, like moments from high school soccer, even though the level wasn't even close to the club that I was playing at, than I do from club. And I think it's just because more was at stake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think you remember the environment, you remember the smell, you remember, you know, you remember the lights, you remember who your opponent was.
Oh, those lights, man. You know, couldn't see anything.
But there's like so much more that comes with it, right? Because it was special. It was like 16 games or whatever to get to a playoff, you know? So like everything mattered. You know,
your pictures are in the paper, and I still have my varsity jacket with my patches down the sleeve, and my big P on the shoulder, and everything. Are you kidding me?
And acceptance, right? Acceptance was huge, right? How are you going to feel the next day in front of your peers was awesome, right?
Yep.
And like you say, you're walking the halls, you're like, man, I got class all day long. We don't kick off till 7. Like, how can this day get over, right? How can you get to the 7 o'clock, the bus ride over, you know? There's a lot that goes into it. You know,
it's funny because, you know, this whole episode is obviously about, you know, adolescent goalkeeping and the development, you know, aspect of it. But this goes into the development aspect. And I'm really glad that we're touching on it, because I think that maybe one of the biggest mistakes that the DA made was disallowing the high school experience. Because from a goalkeeping standpoint, at least, getting those reps from a mental standpoint of this pressure and the community and all of that just is so much more. I mean, I think it's really, really, really negatively affected a lot of the goalkeepers in that identification program throughout the DA from 07 to 2020, because they never got to experience that. And then they got to college, and now Saskia's got them as a freshman. They've never played in front of people before. They don't know how to do this.
And not just people, sell out like every game. And look, let's take let's take Pally High, for example, one of the biggest schools out here, Palisades High School. My kids, like, that is one of the hardest goalkeeping positions to get, is if you can make it. There are 3,000 kids at this high school. And every club team feeds into this high school. And, you know, you show up to that campus, and it's a gorgeous, like, stadium, whether it's lacrosse stadium, football stadium, soccer stadium, whatever it is, you know, peas everywhere, dolphins everywhere, the whole 9 yards. And these kids, all they talk about is making that team. And, oh, but so-and-so is there from Breakers. No, and so-and-so's there. And this is so important to them. And playing in front of those Friday night lights, and playing on that field and representing Pally High School. And I love it. And it is totally different than them trying to make their club team. And totally different from them going on the weekends and playing in a tournament. Their mentality, to see the mentality on the Archer girls and stuff like that, when they would lose or they would win in front of everybody, was apples and oranges to losing a club game. And club coaches can come at me, bring it on, but I swear to God, I am an advocate for playing in high school. And I don't care how bad your high school team is. My high school team was horrible, and I still made the national team.
Yeah, so. And I think whether it could be high school soccer, it could be any other outlet other than club soccer that promotes and helps players, not just goalkeepers, but players develop that emotional intelligence. And I think that is one of the biggest factors now, I think, for me as a coach, is understanding how to develop that emotional, like the EQ. Because I know that, I played at the DA Academy, and I missed my senior year of high school because they said, hey, you can't play high school because, you're part of the academy. And I felt when I was with the academy, it was a lot of not robotic movements, but of course I was getting better and understanding, but I loved goalkeeping. So it was like every day was a new day, but I could see how it could be kind of just repetitive and a little bit robotic when you're just trying to play, in front of scouts, in front of college coaches, and your mind doesn't ever really get to enjoy the position as much, I don't feel. But when you go to high school, like that emotional, sense and everything, pride, everything is coming out of you, and there's different emotions being developed versus just going in where it's like a single kind of one-dimensional approach of like it's college or bust versus high school. It's more of, you said, playing for the community. So I don't know, my question to you guys, for you, Matt, especially, is like, how big is for you and Peter to really emphasize EQ and like emotional intelligence for these goalkeepers?
I think we do it a lot. I think we have to understand, but let me just, I want to reverse real quick to the high school piece for goalkeepers. I think high school for a goalkeeper, and I look at my own situation, you played against so many different types of teams as a goalkeeper, you didn't know what to expect. So right? So you, some
guys couldn't strike a ball, and that actually helped you because you're like, the ball had this weird flight, and you're like,
right?
Hey, that's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how we train.
So the repetitions we got as goalkeepers was unbelievable, right? Forget about the team in front of you. You were seeing kids that were just athletes running at you, taking big touches. Now you're working on a different type of 1v1 or block save, with, crosses, whatever it was. So goalkeepers are losing reps and losing minutes because of not being able to play in high school. And then on the weekend, they're not playing a game they might be the second choice goalkeeper on their DA or their club.
And not getting in at all. Right? I mean, how many of you guys played field and goalkeeper in high school? Because I know I did.
Yeah, every season I did, right? So, so Omar, go back to your question again. I'm sorry.
No, I think one of the biggest things is I get a lot of questions about is how do you develop the, I guess, stressful situations, whether social or physical, in training sessions, to help your goalkeepers develop that kind of no loss of composure in those adversity moments, right? So I think the emotional intelligence of knowing how to roll with the punches, is that something you guys are focusing on in the classroom, film sessions, on the field? Like, how are you guys helping those goalkeepers navigate that?
Fortunately, we have the ability to do all of them. So we'll do a lot of film, right? We'll do a lot of classroom talks. And we also have the ability to, do functional trainings with the teams, right? Since have that different setup compared to a club, we can actually run the session for the team that day. So we might say, hey, to our 17 and 19 DA or, those teams, hey, we're running the session on Wednesday this week. We want to work on this situational stuff tactically. And then we build it in that way, where sometimes you don't get that luxury in a club, right? Because you only have a quarter of a field. You only have this, where we have the ability and the facility to do all those type of things. So we try to do it more often than none, but it's all done either on the field with the groups and in the units, or it's in the film room.
I have a question for everybody here. One of the tough things about adolescence is that, some people try to train the goalkeepers as if they're young pros, and some people try to train them like they're kids. And because they're kind of in this in-between stage between being children and being adults, how do we balance that to keep the sessions fun and light, but yet at the same time productive and beneficial, and also have that discipline to prepare them for young adulthood?
Well, number one, each kid should be handled differently, and limit your numbers. I mean, if we're going to dumb it down, limit your numbers. Don't don't go up to like 10, 12 goalkeepers in a session where you're just going through the motions, and you really can't focus because you want to keep them all engaged, and you really can't focus individually on each keeper. If you have to limit the numbers so you can legitimately focus on each keeper's strengths and weaknesses, because they're all going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So you need to be able to focus on those things, and some need to be treated one way and others need to be treated the other way, but have a basis, have have a level. Like, you're not going to be babying kids and you're not going to be hammering kids. Like, find a mean in there that you can find some consistency and train them on that.
I agree. I think you have to have that medium, right? You have to give them the idea of what you're looking for, but I also think you have to go into every session, regardless of the level, right? Or what they're trying to achieve, that they have to learn something, right? They have to have gotten something out of the session, right? Whether it's learning from the goalkeeper that's in front of them, that's working maybe a little bit harder, but just give them in little tidbits, and always have one thing I always do with my notes is there's 2 or 3 things I'll really write down that I really want them to focus on, but I might not tell them about it, right? And after the session, I might ask them, hey, what did you think of this? What did you learn? What am I? And if they hit on it, then I know that they picked up on something, and they're actually each day learning something more.
Yeah, I think, Matt, to pick up on your point there, I think that's huge, because what I end up doing sometimes is I had college goalkeepers for 2 fall seasons and 1 spring. In the spring, I was a little bit more into the film and I got to show them their tendencies and how we can fix them. But in the fall, we all know in college, it's very difficult to really develop the goalkeepers, because after the first 2-3 weeks, all you're really focused on is the number 1 doing what they need to do, making sure the number 2 is being pushed, number 3 is actually still engaged and willing to continue to push.
Absolutely.
But the biggest thing that I've noticed, and coming back to my own private sessions, is I have a group of 4. Every goalkeeper, more often than not, I have them in a private session first, so I know what their tendencies are and what I need to focus on in every session. So from there, I go, okay, Saskia needs to work on crosses. Okay, Matt needs to work on. Wait,
you should have said crosses. Hold on, you should have said I need to work on crosses too.
And then Matt needs to work on distribution, and Michael needs to work on something else. So I'm kind of drawing up so that each goalkeeper is specifically being worked on something specific. And then again, it's kind of reverse engineering. I kind of do something a little bit different, where I just talk to them and say, look, this is kind of what I'm looking for from you today. I need you to understand this is like what I've noticed in the film. This is what we discussed. Okay, so today I really want you to understand, when I'm taking my touch from the 18, when you're recovering to your line, make sure you set when I'm about to strike the ball. Don't get from point A to point B and wait for. So I'm kind of feeding those little things into them. So I'm doing a little bit different than you, Matt, kind of, but I'm feeding them into that. So that at the end of the session, they go, oh, I actually did notice that. Or actually, oh, I didn't notice that. So I think that's the important thing too, is giving them the expectation from the beginning. I think is kind of my style. Giving them the expectation so that there's no surprises if I get pissed off at the end of it. You know what I mean? So I set the tempo and the expectation of like, Michael, I know you're this, and this, but
hold on. Tell me, Omar. I want to know what I need to work on. I seriously do.
Don't get me started right now.
I think that again, that's like the biggest thing that I've been really focusing in on is. I used to be so technical about everything, and like treating Saskia the way Matt needs to be treated, when Saskia may be a savant at 1v1s, but Matt's not very good at 1v1. So I can't say, Matt, this is what's happening with Saskia. Why aren't you doing it like that? This is how it needs to be done, when really you're adjusting to the ebbs and flows of each person's physical ability, psychological ability, social ability. There's so many different factors, things that you have to figure out. And I think the number one thing for us coaches is having that adaptability and being able to, as we tell our goalkeepers, start adding more tools to your toolbox. Same with us. We need to be able to have a little bit of a background and foundation on psychology, understanding what the day-to-day social pressures are in high school. You know what I mean? So understanding all those little things so that we can better suit our goalkeepers once we have those conversations and there's no surprises on both ends.
Yeah. I want to bring something up, Omar, that you posted a few days ago in regards to allowing your goalkeepers to make mistakes and allowing less coaching and kind of a little time frame where you don't do a lot of coaching. You let them figure things out for themselves, maybe a couple weeks or so. And then you go back and kind of break it down and say, what was positive, what was negative during this time period. And you brought it up to Casey Murphy last week, obviously, who's a high level goalkeeper, one of the best out there in NWSL. How comfortable would you be with that? And I want to bring that up to Matt and Saskia. How do you feel about taking a time period like that where you give the players time to just coach themselves rather than the coach coaching them.
Wait, can I elaborate on that real quick? So
Sure.
it gives them more context.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. Anthony White, who's at Bournemouth, he has this mentality where it's like he wants to know, is the technique that we give them, is it ideal to their body type, or is it ideal based on the aesthetic that we as coaches have for what we see as perfect technique? And I think that was kind of where the discussion was kicked off, was what if we gave goalkeepers the freedom for trial and error? You know, we give them a technical foundation up until Matt and Saskia. I know you guys have older goalkeepers, but until maybe like 16 or 15 years old, we give them, you know, the technical foundation and things like that. But maybe at like 15 or 16, once they're starting to fill out on their bodies, we say, look, for this next 2 weeks, I'm not going to say much in training. I'm going to let you, you know, try new things, trial and error. You kind of, you know, figure out and you see how you feel. And I was thinking, what if we did like a psychological test or like a psych feedback every single day? And like, what do you feel is the best feeling about having this newfound freedom of not having a coach overanalyze and give you constant feedback? So that now that the stage has kind of been set, would you guys think that that's something that you guys would be interested in doing?
Thank you for making it eloquent, by the way, Omar.
Step back. I mean, we talked about this last week. I step back a lot and let them. Sometimes it's hard, and let them play and let them figure it out. I want to see, without me hovering over them and like assessing and correcting every little thing. I want to see them make mistakes, and if they correct it themselves, and if they understand why they made the mistakes. And I said that last week, that I'll ask what happened on this play, what happened here, instead of me. I'll be like, okay, let's see, like, let's do crosses, let's do like near far slot, let's figure this out, whether it's, even if it's a scrimmage or a small sided game. And I'll sit and I'll watch and I'll be like, I've given you tools, let's see what you're doing, what bad habits you have, and if you understand those bad habits, and then we'll sit down and talk about it. Like, why did this ball go in? What happened here? What did you do right here and stuff? And see if they can self-coach themselves, because it's important. Because like I said last week, we can't always be with them. And the tools we're giving them, they have to be able to understand them, not just because I'm saying it, but because they truly understand why something broke down. They have to understand goalkeeping. They have to understand soccer themselves. That's teaching.
And I agree. We have to step back every once in a while just to give them their own little freedom. If we continue to pound certain things into them or on them about the same things, it turns into white noise. So we have to step back. We have to give them chances to grow, chances to feel out different things, different ways, maybe a different shape, whatever it is. But yeah, absolutely, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing as you see those field player coaches that just joystick. Like, you know, and I sit there at games and I have to take a walk, because I'm just like, you know, I was taught with the national team and everything, look, we trained all week. Like, I've given you the tools. We've run through this stuff. Like, now you guys figure it out, because it's a free flowing sport. Like, there is no, you have to pass it here, you have to pass it there, you have to take that shot. Like, there's room for creativity. There's room for like adjustment. There's room for everything. And you have to allow the athletes to do that and figure out what's right and what's wrong and what works and what doesn't. And if they can do that in the free flow of play, then you've done your job. Yeah, and if you sit there and you're like, no, pass it here, it's inside, go right around here. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Like, I can't stand coaches like that. I have to walk away. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things too that I've younger goalkeepers will ask me, like, hey, how can I improve my game? Is normally I'll send them some of my sessions, like I'd say 2 or 3 of my sessions, and I film all my sessions, so I have them on YouTube, and I say, hey, go watch this session, and I want you to come back and tell me, one, how can I make this more game realistic, and how would you adapt this session for younger goalkeepers or older goalkeepers? And I've found success with that, because a lot of the kids will come back and say, either I don't know how to make this more game realistic, I think it's good, or I'll tell them, look, you're not trying hard enough. I need you to, really think and really understand. So that's also another thing too, is that I was happy that I got to play or coach while I was still playing in college. And it kind of opened my eyes and opened my mind up to certain sessions that I liked and what I could get from those sessions to help me improve and develop. So that's what I would say for the younger goalkeepers out there too, is, go become a coach, go Go try and understand how to run a team. And then from there, maybe when you're playing on the weekend and your team goes down 1-0, you're not going crazy and you have the presence of mind to be articulate in those moments and be that backbone for your team versus going crazy and starting yelling and yelling and yelling. Yeah. And same thing with understanding technical training sessions. And like on 1v1s, a kid you were training never got set. Oh my God, that's something that I never do, or I don't do well enough. How can I translate that to my own game? So I think that's the importance, I think, of, again, I keep saying the cognitive and like the social side of things, but if we can keep on putting those goalkeepers in those positions, like you said, Saskia and Matt, to think for themselves and regurgitate things back to you and articulate further what your points were, that's the end all be all, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say, you know, because we're going over an hour right now, so I kind of want to start wrapping up right here, is that I want a lot of the young goalkeeper coaches out there and the younger goalkeepers who are watching this or listening to this podcast right now to take that really into account. Keep learning from your own mistakes and from other people's mistakes and from their strengths as well too. Omar, I absolutely love the fact that you asked those questions, because one of the biggest issues I see out there is people watch training sessions and they never really get to understand why those sessions are being run. And then they just go, that's really cool. That looks awesome. I want to do that. Well, why do you want to do that?
I asked those questions because Mike asked me those questions, by the way. So I want to let everybody know it's a chain of 4 things are. So that's why I think, again, I've been very fortunate to have Mike and people like that in my corner, because they make certain things more apparent to me and give me thought-provoking questions that may not be what I want in the moment. But when I sit back and reflect and I go, oh my God, that's something that I probably should have been doing. Why didn't I do this earlier? So stuff that was foreign to you at one point. And if you notice anything that your coach teaches you at the first, foundation of any piece, it's foreign. But the more you start comprehending and understanding, why is this something that they're teaching me, or why is this something that they're telling me? And you start understanding why this coach is justifying what you need to do with this, this, and this. Now you're coupling your justification with their justification. And then you're seeing what to keep and what not to keep. And I think thinking freely and having that constant feedback like you gave me, Mike, is important to grow in anything you do.
See, Matt, you've got Peter Meller. Omar's got 5'8" podcast host. So, definitely the same level. All right, guys. Saskia, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just think one of my favorite things, especially in that age group and everything, is when my kids come back to me on a Monday and I ask them how their games went and stuff, and they can break down their goals. And they can talk to me about how things broke down, what they did right, what they did wrong. You know what? I came off my line. I didn't set. I got beat this way, or, I jumped on a cross, or, my body, I was flat footed. I was on my heels, or I made a great save because, my footwork was great. I had my positioning right and stuff like that. I love when the goalkeepers I train can come back and tell me that, instead of me telling them, this is what you did, this is what you didn't do. I always ask them first, break it down, let me know. Because I already know, I've already been told by the coaches, I've already seen video or whatever, but I want them to know. I want them to be able to assess themselves, teach themselves, coach themselves. And if they're wrong, we'll talk about it. No, I think your positioning was okay on this, but your footwork was off on this, or something like that. But as long as you're teaching kids to be able to understand their position, understand what you're teaching them and why, then you're on the right track.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with that as well, right? They have to learn, they have to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think
last thing.
Oh, sure, Omar.
No, I think
I was just being told we were over an hour, and so I was.
You told me to tell you.
I know. No, I know.
That's right.
I was trying to be respectful because I'm terrified of Saskia.
No, but I think to bring everything full circle, I think what Matt said earlier on about building that trust with their goalkeepers, I think that is what segues you to allow your goalkeepers to think freely, because if they step into a video session and they're afraid that everything they're going to say to you about their positioning, about their technique is going to be, scrutinized, then they're never going to think freely, and they're always going to think from a place of fear versus instinct. So I think that's the importance of building that trust. And like Saskia said, just allow them the freedom to think for themselves. And again, we talked to Tim Dittmer, Mike and I in Baltimore, and he said, if you're trying to make a chocolate cake, but you don't put chocolate mix in there, you're not going to get a chocolate cake. So bringing that full circle is letting your goalkeeper stepping into these environments that you've kind of created for them, but allow them to think off instinct and go full speed on that. And the only way they're going to be able to go full speed is if they trust that you're going to give them the freedom to do that. So that's all I would say.
Yeah. I think to elaborate on that is what Tim said is like, if you want a thinking goalkeeper,
yes,
they need to be allowed to think. Otherwise, you're never going to get a thinking goalkeeper. Well, Matt, if anybody wants to know more about IMG and what you guys have going on right there, if there's any goalkeeper coaches out there, they kind of want to, talk to you about, what they're doing at their program and how, you might be able to help give them some guidance. By the way, shout out to what you and Peter are doing. I mean,
Absolutely.
Peter said the nicest things about you when I was speaking to him recently. And, I mean, honestly, that's like praise from Caesar right there. So that's,
I slipped him a 20.
That's it.
That's it. That's it these days.
But yeah, where's the best place for you people to reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on my Instagram, or probably the easiest, right? Swoosh Brown 26, and I'd be happy to share information with them. When it comes to goalkeepers, just like this show, it's fantastic. We just need to be open and we need to discuss the position more. So any insight I can give or any insight I can get from anybody, I'm always open to it.
Yeah. Love it.
And then obviously Saskia's getting more active on social media, I've noticed lately. So
what? I'm the same. I'm the same. It's Saskia. It's just Saskia Weber, both at Instagram and at Facebook. I don't do Twitter.
so and Omar, I know you need no plugs, but if there's anything you want to plug at the end right here, let us know.
Not much else, but I'm excited to, once hopefully everything gets back to normal, I'm really hoping that a lot of people take, the interviews that Mike, you and I are doing and other people are doing to heart, especially from coaches as well. And don't use this as the time to like get a leg up on the competition. And the competition is beating yourself, essentially getting better than you were before this quarantine. And I'm hoping that that's what people are doing.
I know you are attending a webinar tomorrow, right? Do you want to plug that at all?
Yeah, I can send you guys the link. I set up a webinar tomorrow with Matt Doyle, who's the Birmingham City Academy director or goalkeeping director. And he's just going to go through a presentation about, his development and what they do with the academy there.
Nice.
Right on.
Awesome, guys. And if you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, just contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18 media.com. At Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms, Twitter at Goalkeeper Pod. That's all the time on Inside the 18. And we are out. Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Matt, thanks for doing that, man.